Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
You're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Hey guys, Exergy wanted us to remind you, don't forget about the low pressure system when you're installing new injectors.
Really common practice even for us over here at Duramax Tuner. So many times guys are like, hey, maybe they have 50,000 miles on their truck and need injectors. Maybe it's 100 or 150,000 miles. It's a staple, in my opinion, if you're going to replace the injectors, maybe even the injection pump, to do the low pressure, because that's where it all starts.
It is, yeah. I think a lot of guys forget that, you can have a leak in the low pressure system and not have fuel dripping under your truck.
Or just the ability to offer better fuel filtration. You don't have control over where the fuel is coming from, right? You know, you're on E, you go to a local station, you don't know if they're a high traffic fuel station or not. So that lift pump isn't an insurance that the few $1,000s that you invest in new injectors is being treated accordingly.
Absolutely correct.
So, something there. They also, this is something that I didn't know. So the newer Duramax, so the LML specifically, and the 6.7 Powerstroke, the Scorpion engine, they run a Piezo injector. So when you either send the injectors out or you buy modified injectors, they actually modify the bodies, okay?
Yep.
When they do the nozzle modification from stock.
Yeah, Piezo injectors.
Piezo, yes. I don't have that tongue, but yeah, good job.
Piezo injectors, they work differently than solenoid-based injectors. Yeah. So Piezo basically means controlled through burst of electricity. Mm-hmm. A little bit different than solenoid, which runs off like a signal, right? Yep. So with the Piezo injectors, it's not as simple as we never recommend swapping tips, but you can swap tips and you will get horsepower. It's not the best way to do it. We would never recommend it. It will equal horsepower. It's probably not going to just equal horsepower in an LML. You have to modify the body to make it work. It'd be like doing 100% over injectors on a stock CP3.
Or doing 100 overs on a stock Cal of the ECM.
Yeah.
The bodies, if the injector nozzle is going to flow X fuel, the body needs to be able to correspond in how it operates to deliver the fuel to the nozzle dispersing into the cylinder.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. Chris, we also had a really cool new segment here from Facebook with WC Fab. We asked one of our newer producers here on the show, Justin Tyson, to go ahead and read off this week's customer send-in. So we're going to kick it over to Justin right now, reading from Joshua Peterson, and I actually helped him out on this one with a conversation I had with one of our listeners on Facebook.
This comes from Joshua Peterson. Hey, I watch the Diesel podcast all the time. I own a 1996 F350 7.3 crew cab gear jammer. Has 350,000 miles on it. Looking for some upgrades, starting with air and injectors. Looking at 160 by 30. What turbos would you recommend for a daily driver? Mild tow, really want compounds.
So I wrote back to him. I sold my Ford over a year ago now. Mine was stock besides intake, exhaust, and tuner. The 7.3 is a really expensive and hard platform to build power with. It certainly can be done, but if you want 300 to 600 horsepower, a Cummins would be a lot better option for a budget build. After you do all the upgrades to make a 7.3, you could have a much faster and more powerful truck going with an early common rail 03 or 04. Even a 400 to 500 horsepower VP like the 98.5 to 02 models for the same or less money. If your budget allows, I of course would suggest a Duramax. Even if you have to start with an LB7, do injectors, trans, head gasket, which ballpark $7,000 DIY, probably $15,000 shop rate, I think you would be better off in the long run. But what's really interesting here is Joshua had something to write back.
I like the Cummins route, but I'm a Ford Powerstroke guy, so a bit of work is not a problem. I want to learn all I can.
Okay, so there it is, guys. So we have a customer a listener who sent in saying he's got that 96 7.3 F350.
Hell yeah.
I have a big shout out to him talking about gear jammers and shit.
My first diesel was a 96 F250. It was an auto though, but
we're gear jammer homies, me and Joshua.
I'm surprised you knew how to drive a manual.
I've always been able to drive manual, just not well.
No, right? Fuck no.
Right. I can make it move. Yeah. I will just be doing a clutch as often as I do oil changes.
Story of my life.
No big deal. What I thought was surprising here is I feel like that conversation had a bit of a twist for me. We get a lot of guys who send in talking about making power 7.3s. And it's a very simple conversation, as you heard. Yeah. That's kind of my standard response of like, hey, that's great. I loved my 7.3. They're great work trucks, but just making power on them is very impractical. So I coached him into getting into an early common rail Cummins. Yeah. If he only wanted 400 or 500 horsepower, maybe a VP truck. I think a VP truck at 500 horse is probably more expensive than an early common rail at 500 horse.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the supporting modifications, in the VP world to achieve 500 horse, the money is going to be spent in different areas. Right. Granted, the VP world, parts are cheaper, but you have to have a trans to support it. If you're doing an automatic manual, it's much different, of course, but there's that big cost factor there.
There is.
But to achieve 500 horse in a common rail, man, I mean, literally... Let's say you have a manual trans truck, you add a clutch in the mix, that's going to be accounted for on any of the platforms.
Right.
You do that, you do a tuner, you can do an intake exhaust, the supporting mods, things that help it breathe. Basic mods, you're at 500 horse.
Right, which you're going to do those on any diesel you get.
Exactly.
So do you even really count that as the difference, right?
I mean, you're still talking stock turbo, stock fuel setup. If you do a VP truck, you're talking a turbo upgrade. Injectors are really inexpensive, but you're talking an injector upgrade.
And you still have to do the work too. I mean, it's not just buy the parts, right? So you either have to pay somebody or in Joshua's case, he's going to go do the install himself.
I mean, that's nice to have that option. I mean, granted, the VP trucks are a little easier to work on, but it's really about what you're after. Do you want a new body style, old body style? And there's a value there. You'll make more power cheaper on a common rail, but when the wear items are worn out, you're going to pay more to replace them. So it just really depends on the budget.
And that's what I thought was surprising about Joshua, was for him, it didn't come down to this practical sense that you and I have kind of trained ourselves to think like this, where we'll just spend your money where you're going to get the most bang for your buck to get horsepower. Like what we just assume everybody is like us.
Right.
And at the end of their project, they want to look back and say, well, this was very practical. I did this in a very logical way. But that's not true for everybody.
No.
Some guys want to do it the hard way.
Do.
Some guys, they want to tackle the challenges. Yep. They want to be one of very few people who have even a 500 horsepower 7.3, something like that.
Or a VP truck.
Or a VP
guys
truck or whatever.
There's a lot of guys out there that want to tackle a project and more or less reinvent the wheel. Not everyone is successful, but at the same time, not everyone fails at that either.
That's right.
That's what makes this industry so much fun.
And I think that's a big shout out. So Joshua, we definitely will cheer you on. I'm excited to see where you go with your 7.3. I think Ron Olson at Hypermax is going to be a really good friend of yours.
Good resource.
We've had him on the show. He was one of my favorite interviews of all time. Somebody who really has had a passion for diesel performance and is an expert in 7.3s for decades, literally. So reach out to Ron. He'll be able to help you in that respect. Speaking of tackling challenges,
dude.
LML twin kit from Duramax Tuner officially released.
So we just did some filming not long ago with Jason Wherli's shop truck, quote unquote. It's a 2016 regular cab. I was corrected. It's a 3500, not a 2500.
Yeah.
Either way, if it's a single rear wheel, to me, it's a 2500. I don't care.
I have a hard time with that one too.
But the truck was fitted with the proper corresponding modifications to make that twin turbo kit come alive. So what the guys over at WC Fab and the guys over at Duramax Tuner did was create an emissions intact twin turbo system to work on any factory 1516 LML.
Yeah.
You could do it on a stock truck, help with EGT control, things like that. But to really, really take the potential of the kit to its
next level,
thank you, is going to be some other supporting mods like a CP4 upgrade over from Exergy Performance, a lift pump, address the trans a little bit. But that's a turnkey 630 horsepower truck that blows my mind. Simple as that.
We've both had a chance to drive it, and we both came back and said the same thing. This is my favorite truck to drive on the road.
That honestly, it's one of mine for sure. I definitely like the newer trucks. I like the quietness, especially when you throw a compound turbo system into the mix and you get a broader power curve. I mean, you would not expect for how that truck gets into its power band and how it maintains its torque curve. Very impressive. We can talk about it all the time over the phone, but until you experience it firsthand, it's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when we drove Brett Keel's regular cab short bed, 1,200 horsepower, two-wheel drive.
Yeah.
With clearly both one of our favorites. You can't see us right now.
We're both grinning. We're both smiling, for sure.
That thing was insane to drive. But the difference between that and Jason's, like you said, it's some of the creature comforts. It also, when you're driving that regular cab, Jason's regular cab with that DT LML twin kit, which is a SXE 369 stocker setup for the turbos. Under 30% throttle, you would never know it was there.
No.
It feels completely stock. Well, stock tuned, right?
The throttle response is a little bit more refined.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more improved. But I think what you're trying to say is it has the ability to support the power if you want to have fun. But at the same time, it is so refined that the drivability that we stress day in and day out, it is all there. It's not a 1,200 horse truck, but it's a functional 600 plus wheel horsepower truck that you can use in any application.
Absolutely. And they've been towing trailers with it for over a year now. It's been through a lot of R&D, and that's why it came up when we were talking about tackling challenges. When this design first came together as an emissions-equipped twin turbo kit.
5 years ago now.
5 years ago.
Nick Prignance had that 11 Denali.
Initially, it was an S475 stocker kit.
Yep.
And we saw that kit run its course. We saw the trucks go up to 700, 750 horsepower, which, to be honest, even this 369 stocker kit, this could be pushed farther.
We validated.
Yeah,
it's been validated. The guys over at Diesel Tech Magazine did a build that we were a part of. Yep. The gentleman's name, Matt Rosenberg, which we had on the podcast a couple years ago, or you and Danny did at that point.
Sure.
But 730 horse through the same kit, difference being injectors, right?
Right. Well, and that atmospheric charger, and that's where I think...
That was the 369.
That was...
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Rosenberg's...
Yes, Rosenberg's was the 369.
At any rate, I think what we've seen over time is the development in this kit,
Absolutely.
where it went through multiple trucks, multiple R&D. It was not something that was like, oh, we'll just take a standard piping kit and throw it together.
You can't. I mean, you pop the hood on an LML, go pop any stock LML hood open. It's very, very difficult to find open space to put not only piping, but a whole other turbocharger.
Yeah.
Like, it's impressive to say the least. Hats off, over to Wherli once again. They build a lot of cool stuff, but you have to have a really creative mind to develop the kit the way he did and fit everything the way it did.
It looks like something the factory would pump out.
Oh, you were to do a black kit like that and put it under the hood of a truck, you would be like, oh, it came from the factory this way.
Literally.
Like, it looks more refined than like a 6.4 with their compound setup, Ford. So, hats off to them again. They did a great job with that project.
Absolutely. And speaking of doing a great job with an insanely hard project, we have a special guest today on the show. 2000. Well, he's been in all of the UCCs. He's coming back again this year. He's still dealing with a 6-liter.
6-liter.
We are so excited to have on Jesse Warren. Jesse, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. Kind of busy here getting ready for UCC.
I hear you, man. Thank you so much for carving out a little time for our listeners. I know we actually got some pretty demanding requests to get you on the show here.
I just want to point out, like, some of our listeners, right? They send in messages. We were talking before this started, and I neglect our messenger. I get it, but you're in high demand, man.
High demand. Definitely, you got some fans out there, and I think it's because of, one, the results that you've put on at the UCC obviously have been very impressive. You've ranked pretty high last year, but you also just seem to have a great customer service base to your constituents, we'll say.
Look at every badass 6-liter that's out there. They have Warren diesel injectors too. I just want to point that out.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah, we try. We try hard. It gets, it can be overwhelming sometimes, but we do the best we can.
Well, Jesse, I mean, you're huge in the Ford world, but I think a lot of our listeners are probably Duramax and Cummins guys. Give us a little bit of rundown of your history in diesel performance.
I've always been a Ford guy, kind of. But I own all three. I've got a Duramax and a Cummins, and I have all of them. But I've always been. I like a big challenge, and the 6-liter has always been a kind of a challenge.
That's true.
That's the nicest thing ever said about a 6-liter.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, when we decided hadn't been in it real long at the time. We started small. We grew. We're a 13-employee business right now. I believe we got 13 employees, but back 5 years ago, guys would ask me, when are we going to see 1,000 horsepower out of a 6-liter? I was like, don't hold your breath. It's probably not going to happen.
Or last more than 1,000 miles, right? Shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a low blow. I didn't mean it.
That's all right. But yeah, every time I think we're about at the end of the road, we find something a little more here and there, and keep finding a little bit more. But I think we're getting about to where I don't know how much more is left in what we're doing, but there may be a little bit more left.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty impressed with what 6 liters have done. I know we had Charlie Keeter on a couple of times. He really blew us away with his truck and the performance of it. And I know watching you and a couple of the other guys out there at UCC last year with the Fords, I think there is definitely a chance for an argument to be made that 6 liters are a valid performance platform. Can you walk us through your experience last year at UCC?
Last year we did really well. I was surprised at where we placed in the end. We had a lot of trouble. It may not look like it, but we were not running at our best out there. We had a lot of trouble with maintaining high pressure oil pressure in the system we had. The IPR did not want to stay shut, kept popping open. Pressure would drop, and we were not able to. We finally got a good pass in toward the end of the drag race night, which was a 10:03 at 144 mile an hour, and it was okay, but we had a lot left in that truck the way it was set up last year, and after that event when we figured some issues out, we went to a mechanical IPR system, which netted us a decent amount of horsepower. Then we later went to a bigger set of injectors and were able to make quite a bit more horsepower than what we had out there last year, but it was probably good in the end, being where we were at last year, because if we would have been able to go to the full potential with the injectors we had there, we probably would have broke the engine out there last year.
Well, definitely keeping it together for all 3 events, we know from talking to everybody and from seeing this in the past, is absolutely key to winning it. Tell us about what some of your strategies were last year to keep the truck together through all 3 events.
The strategy we had is pretty much just not brake. Try to keep it from braking, and we did okay. We kind of lucked out. Last year we didn't have billet rockers, and that's one of the biggest issues with a high horsepower 6.0 is breaking rocker arms. And we pulled through that event and it never broke. I was surprised. Just surprised myself. When you're making that power to pull through an event like that, you're really lucky if you don't break. And it was luck. It was kind of luck. It really was.
Prepping yourself, right, for something like the UCC. You're in the past, you've competed in the DPC as well, correct?
Yeah, I believe it was 2015.
So what was some of the differences in your prepping for the UCC versus the DPC?
The way I kind of look, Diesel Power Challenge is more of street trucks. You got more street trucks going on out there. The prep for UCC is a lot. You go all out. UCC, there's not. The competition at the UCC is so much higher than the Diesel Power Challenge. It's not even on the same platform, really.
Okay.
The competition they bring out to the UCC, if you come there after winning Diesel Power, if you do win Diesel Power Challenge, you can get into it and you can do okay, but you're not. The competition is unbelievably stronger at the UCC event.
Okay, and because that competition is stronger, I'm sure you didn't spend as much time practicing driving around with a trailer on and backing up with it and things like that. Did you spend more time drag racing and sled pulling to get prepared, or did you just spend more time beefing up the truck to make more power?
Most of UCC, most of that, we had the truck. We had drag racing, so we knew about where we were at there. Sled pulling, we knew what we needed, and UCC is pretty much all out raw power. So when we get ready for UCC, it's just making the most power we can make, and also, the truck, getting the truck dialed in to where we need it. So there's quite a bit, it's mostly just in the engine. That's where it's at.
Oh no, is that your Facebook Messenger going off right now?
That's a 4-door dinger, dog. That's a 670s in right now.
Yeah, this thing doesn't have UE. But yeah, getting ready for UCC, we don't. The weight reduction is a big thing this year. We're really going to focus on weight reduction. We've got to get our weight down, and for this year, coming up this year, where our goal is, I figure we need about 2,000 horsepower fuel only, and we're really close. But it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we're doing pretty good this year compared to last year.
What'd you make last year on the dyno?
We were 1610 to the tires out there. 1610 to the tires. That was a lot of nitrous. This year, we've been to the engine dyno twice now, and we're about where we need to be. I need about, we're making 1873 fuel only on an engine dyno, and that's up a lot from last year. That's up a lot. But we'd like to see 2,000. I think we're going to get that. Is looking pretty good.
Can you give us a little insight, like what's the turbocharger setup, your injector setup, anything along those lines?
Yeah, we were down to the engine dyno the first round, and we were making too much heat. So the injectors, they're flowing 710, 720 is what they were at. And we have a bigger set, but that's what we made this 1873 with, and it was 2,800 some foot-pounds of torque. And the power was making peak power around 4,150, 4,200. Overall boost is 138 psi of boost, and we did not have water injection, and it ended up a valve broke. It burnt one of the stems in half. It got too hot, and it broke a valve and took out a piston.
Now, is this a compound turbo setup, or what are you running for turbos?
Yeah, we run I run a Weimer's atmospheric charger is a Weimer's HX82. That's a 112 millimeter charger with the G trim turbine, 11 blade G trim, and then the first round we were on a 475 for the high pressure charger, and that's on the small side. And the reason for that is so we can spool up with a automatic transmission.
Okay.
But I figure that's kind of hurting us. Our drive pressure was way high. It was up at around 170 or 180.
Oh wow!
So the drive pressure was too high. So we ended up got a stainless diesel, and we got a S480. It's a 96 turbine S480. 5-blade wheel, so that's the one there for the high pressure now, and we went to a bigger injector. It's a bigger nozzle, but we also have, just coming in this week, we have some bigger plungers coming in, and we have, with a mechanical pressure regulator system, we can turn the pressure up and get the same nozzle pressure we have now. So I'm thinking with those few changes, we added water injection from Hazel's machine. We got that on there, 3 high pressure nozzles, and if we don't hit over 2,000, I'd kind of be surprised.
Really?
That's
okay.
awesome.
So you're pretty confident in that. Now, when you say 2,000, do you mean 2,000 on the engine dyno or 2,000 at the wheels on the chassis dyno?
Yeah, that's 2,000 on an engine dyno, and this is what our calculations are going into UCC. I figure we need at least 2,000 fuel only on an engine dyno, and then we're hoping we can at least spray the difference to make it up on a chassis dyno. So if we can make 2,000 fuel only on an engine dyno, there's a good chance we can spray it to 2,000 on a chassis dyno.
It seems a couple of the guys we've interviewed, they've had that same type of thought process. If they can make X amount of power fuel only engine dyno, they'll compensate the difference with nitrous to do that.
I guess most of us figure about a 20% driveline loss from engine dyno to the wheels, right? So that would bring you down to about 1,800 horse. How much spray are you throwing at it?
That's 10%.
I'm sorry. 1,600.
Yeah,
you're right.
Way to show your imperfections.
Yeah, I'm a mathematician. Okay, so that brings you down to 1,600. So how much spray are you going to use to make up 400 horsepower?
Clearly a 400 horse worth fucker.
We'll probably do 3 stages, something close to 3 stages probably.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
I'm not sure. I hope it holds together. We got billet rockers in there. Everything else in the bottom end was fine. The engine we made the power with so far, everything was fine in the bottom end. There's no issues. We're not seeing any issues in the bottom end. The head gaskets are fine. Everything seems okay. So I think we'll be okay.
2,000 horsepower, 6-liter to the rear tire.
I just love that
chassis dyno.
that like probably the strongest 6-liter competitor out there, or at least one of the strongest 6-liter competitors out there, still says I hope. Like, fuck it, I hope. I hope it works. No, but that's everybody's situation, right? We're less than 40 days away from UCC right now. It's going on May 4th, 5th, and 6th in Brownsburg, Indiana at the Lucas Oil Raceway.
I hate you.
But I guess my point is that like very few people have their truck together. Yeah. Very few people are going to have much of a chance to take it out and test it between all those final revisions and the UCC. What is your game plan? What does your timeline look like for having this thing together? And do you plan on testing it Friday, May 4th at the track? Or are you going to get out beforehand?
Well, we're hoping we can test it out. The local track would be Thompson, Ohio here. We'll head out there, and I'm hoping at least 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time. 3 weeks, maybe a week before the event. We probably won't test it the Friday night or the night before the event starts. We probably will. There's a big going in the way we're going in this year. Going up with power is that can be a big setback too. The more power, the more the challenges to hold everything together.
Oh yeah.
Well,
so it might kind of.
I was going to say that. That really brings up a great point about being able to hold the power together and making it through all three events. Like you said, last year you guys really just kind of got lucky. It sounded like you pushed the truck pretty hard, and this year you're already planning on going faster and making more power. What kind of things do you do for the rest of the truck outside of the engine to make sure that it's going to make it through all three events?
We're going to bring a bigger rear end in this year. For sled pull, we're going to have a Dana 80, and the Dana 80 is not really that big of a rear end. Some guys use a bigger Rockwell, but I think if that's been a pulling rear end we pulled with, I think it'll hold up okay with the 37 spline axles. As far as drag racing, we're going full weight reduction, so we've got fiberglass bedsides and what else we got going on there? Quite a bit of stuff. Full link in the rear end from Miles Flight. Probably fiberglass hoods and the fiberglass front bumper and maybe fiberglass doors. We got to drop some weight. The thing with UCC is kind of bittersweet. You can't go in with a full-blown race truck and do good overall. You can. I think Levon's done really well with that, but this is a four-door. It's not really a race truck, so I wouldn't want to race this truck outside of UCC too much. So we're stuck with a heavy truck, kind of.
Okay. Well, I mean, 10s last year, and you still didn't you place, I think, 5th overall?
Yeah, we did 5th overall last year.
Okay, and that was with running a 10-second quarter because I think a lot of guys had problems last year getting a good time down on the track. A lot of the guys we really looked, Anthony Reams and Wagler and a bunch of other trucks that we thought were going to put down some really fast times, and just everybody seemed to have problems. If you would have asked me last year at this time, would I thought a 10-second pass would have been with a 5th place competitor?
Absolutely not. I
would have said no. What are you shooting for this year? What's the goal in the quarter?
The goal is sub 950s. That's what we should have. I think we will have sub 950s, but I'll be happy with anything under 950.
Okay.
And driving the truck off the track. You got to put that in there.
Why do you got to be picky about it, Chris? He said run 950s.
Dude.
Ultimately, going in, we want to go in and we want to have that truck dialed in to where we can go in on the track and make one pass and make the pass we need and pretty much be done, but it usually doesn't go that way.
I was going to say, you got 12 hours of racing, so literally our next line of questions is if you hit a 950 on the first run, are you done for the day? Do you park it?
We may. It all depends what the truck looks like and how we feel about the way it's holding together. We will have a second engine sitting there ready to go on a stand, so I'm not sure. It all depends on how we feel about the event.
Okay. And you're mentioning here a second engine, so you have a complete engine setup where you're pretty much going to pull injectors, turbo, top-end components, throw them on it, and throw it in, or is it fully dressed, like just ready to install with turbos and injectors and everything?
Probably be just turbos and injectors. It's going to have heads on it. It's going to be fully dressed. It's going to be a long block. No turbos, but it will be a long block.
Gotcha. Okay.
Smart.
And then now you're dropping weight for the drag races, which is day one. Weight doesn't really matter on the dyno at all, right? So I can't imagine you guys are going to go through a big swap Friday night. Are you going to go and put all of those, the stock doors and the hood and the fenders and the bed, all that back on it to drag race to get back up to 8,500 pounds?
Or yeah, for sled pulling, we'll probably, most of the weight can stay off the back end, like as far as the bedsides. Keeping the fiberglass bedsides, we're okay in that, but we have a weight box that'll be in the front. 8,500 is a lot of weight, so we may. It all depends. If we can get 8,500 in the weight box, we'll be okay.
Oh my
God!
God.
Weight in the weight box.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, that's a couple 1,000 pounds up front, right? So that'll be really interesting to see.
That's a lot of weight. Most sanctioned organizations would go 8,000 is what they usually pull. So that extra 500 pounds is a lot of weight out there.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
It is, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's also the difference between a fiberglass bed and a stock bed, right? I mean, give or take.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about tires, man? Let's talk about putting the power on the ground. How do the tires change up between the 3 days?
We got hit hard with bad tires last year. We went in with too small of tires. I think they were M&H's. They were a 30-inch tire. Something like a 30-inch tire, and it was cold, and everybody was having traction issues, and that's what we did also. But we're going to have a 33-inch Mickey Thompson, flex the whole way around, and we'll run. Now on the dyno, we're not sure what we're going to run on the dyno. It's just a good radial tire, something that's good that hooks up on the dyno, and then sled pulling, we will swap over to probably run what we have sitting here right now would be 6 36 1450 STS's trucks as tires.
And those seem to be really popular in the dirt this year.
Yeah, they do really well. We had those. We actually ran those for a year on our pulling truck back home here. They're a big tire, and as long as we can keep our rear axles from snapping, we're okay. But they're one of the bigger STS tires. Most sanctioned events don't allow a 36-inch tire, but I believe we're legal out there. I'm gonna double check the rules, but I think the 36-inch tires are legal out there.
I don't think there are any rules at UCC. I think that's the rule. You have to work on your truck on the lot. That's about it. I mean, there's some safety shit, right? Like you got to have fire extinguisher, all that nonsense, all that jazz. But like really, as far as like this is the class. It's the baddest fucking truck you can bring, and the most amount of power you can put on the ground through all three events. Man,
that's the best part about it all.
I love it. I'm excited. Okay, so who has been a big part of helping you with this build?
I guess we're Wagglers. Jeremy Wagglers. We buy rods from those guys, and we use Colt cams. Colt cams, they help us out a lot, and fire pumps, transmissions. We got a 48 RE from them. It's going in. I mean, a lot of Ford guys don't like to hear that, but we had a lot of issues with input shafts twisting off in the 5R. And even the 4, 5R, they all have the same input shaft, so we got Fire Punk sponsored us. Trying to think who else would be on the list is Justin from Diesel Performance. He's helped us out a lot, and David Ferguson from Red Diamond Transmissions. They all help us out a lot. There's quite a big list off the top of my head. Can't think of anybody else. Trying to think real quick. It would be off the top of my head, that's about all I can think of right now. I'm sure there's more out there.
Not a problem, because I know we're going to grab you at the UCC, Jesse, so that we can do another podcast in person on the actual days of the event.
It's going to be fun.
We're definitely looking forward to that. Chris and I will be out there with Radio Rich, doing podcast live, doing some announcing live, and even hooking up with KJ from Diesel Power Magazine for some special announcements.
What dates are those going to be, Paul?
That'll be May 4th, 5th, and 6th in Brownsburg, Indiana.
Dude,
for the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge.
I hate your radio announcer voice.
It's so good. I practice it so much.
I want to slap you.
I'm going to change your ringtone to my radio announcer voice.
I would fucking kill myself.
Jesse, I definitely appreciate you taking some time to talk to our listeners and put up with Chris and I. One last question before we let you go today. Any other competitors you're keeping an eye out for? Who do you think is going to make a big splash this year?
Some of the top guys. Levon's going to be really good, and you got some of them Duramax guys coming in. Who's a real quick? I can't think of his name right off the top of my head. It's a regular cab. There's a lot of quick trucks this year, and it's going to be we're going to be lucky to hang in anywhere where we did in the last 2 years. That's the way I'm looking at it right now.
So, with that being said, I mean, what are your predictions? Where do you see yourself? What's a goal for you and your 6-liter Ford?
I would love to see. It's better than a 5th spot, but I don't see that happening with the competition level that's coming in. I'd be really happy to hold 5th, but we could move up a little bit. I think we could possibly. It's all on how the cards fall. But the competition is really looking stout. The 2 trucks from industrial injection, they're really strong. I think Sean Bach is going to have a better game this year. So there's so many things that can go wrong, and so many things. It all depends on how them cards fall.
No, I mean, keeping the truck together, that's a personal win. Having a 6-liter last year place 5th place, and again, nothing against 6-liter Fords, but they have the reputation in the industry, and you placed 5th.
With all extreme bias of hating 6-liter Fords, I am severely impressed.
I'm just telling you, I couldn't build my own truck and drive it and have it be a Cummins or Duramax and beat you in 5th. So, you have a lot of experience in the driving and a high horsepower truck, nonetheless. So, you're probably the first one that you're very modest. Would you say, Paul?
Oh yeah.
Whatever happens. Keep the truck together. But we're going to be there rooting for you, man. We wish you the best.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Not a problem, listeners. This has been Paul Wilson
and Chris Emke.
Thanks for listening.
Back 5 years ago, guys would ask me, when are we going to see 1,000 horsepower out of a 6-liter? I was like, don't hold your breath. It's probably not going to happen.
Or last more than 1,000 miles, right? Shit.
Yeah.